Welcome to Mind Your Heart podcast, your favorite corner of the internet where we chat about all things mental health. I'm Emily.
And I'm Trina. Together, we're like your real-life Lorelai and Rory Gilmore. Each week, we'll bring you real conversations about the world of mental health, and we will peel back layers on topics like anxiety, depression, and much more.
We're here to chat with you about the tough stuff, the everyday stuff, and everything in between. So grab your emotional support water bottle, I know we have ours, find your comfiest chair, or keep your eyes on the road, and let's get into it. Are you ready, Mom?
Absolutely. Join us as we mind our hearts and hopefully make minding yours a little easier. Welcome back.
Thanks! Welcome to Mind Your Heart Monday, or if you're listening to this...
Any day of the week is fine.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Trina. And we are the hosts of Mind Your Heart.
Yeah.
A mom and daughter duo.
Yeah.
All right, today we're talking about 10 things that nobody ever talks about.
Yeah.
I swear, I feel like this list has grown.
For
I
sure.
started off with thinking about 3, and then I wrote 5, and then you wrote, I think it was 7, and then it was 10.
Well, so what I went off of was you had 6. You had a list of 6.
Oh, I did? Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, I think there's more than this. Honestly, there's probably more than just this 10.
For
but
sure.
Yeah. And I also had Jake help me
Oh, good.
too. So he came up with one.
Yeah. All right, so we'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Money.
money stress.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it really depends on kind of how you grow up.
That's
because
true.
I think that some people realize or recognize that there's money stress.
Yeah, but I don't think people talk about it.
No, they definitely. Well, I mean, I know that when we had money stress when I was a kid, yeah, we didn't talk about it, but we knew, everybody knew it. There was like whispered conversations with
Yeah.
adults, but they didn't include you or talk about it. So
One thing I think is so cool that I've seen is like parents now like have like their kids like make like their budget with them.
yeah,
And they like will like take them, they're like, okay, well like you have to pick out your thing, like your necessities at the grocery store. And then they get that from like their budget. So they're learning how to like actually grocery shop and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they're that age, and then like whatever they have left over, then like it's their money to spend on whatever. Like obviously like the parents are like still technically paying for it,
Yeah.
but like then they're paying their bills and all that stuff, but like the kids like have an idea of it, and I'm like, that's so smart.
I think that's smart too. My friend Amy, shout out Amy Lemons. She is so smart. Like, and she does she gave the kids like a budget for their
Yeah.
back to school items.
Yeah.
So she's like, I think it was $75. I think it was $75 as a budget. And so the kids are there with their calculators at Target. I don't know if they went to Target or I forgot where they went. Anyway,
Get more
it doesn't
bang
matter.
for your buck at the Dollar Tree.
Yeah, they definitely didn't go to the Dollar Tree, but it might have been Walmart. But anyway,
yeah.
Wherever they went, and then they were like, trying to. It sounded like they were kind of competing too. I mean, her kids are a little bit older,
Yeah.
And she's like, they didn't mean it to be that way, but that
Yeah.
and so, but it worked really well. The kids
Yeah.
were like really aware of what they spent and how much they should spend, and I was like, I thought that was so smart. And she
Yeah.
said, I wish I had done that with my kids, especially Jackson. And and she said, oh, if it makes you feel any better, my dad did this for me and it didn't work. So, I thought that was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I feel like the way that we think, I also have learned that the way that we think about money really has to do with our mindset.
Yeah.
Which is not something I think I ever really considered before.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one of my really good friends, Mariah, who's actually like a mindset money coach, she has taught me so much. She has a podcast too. So if you want to hear
Cool.
more in depth
Yeah.
about that, check her podcast out. I'll link it in the description. But when I was like really struggling this year, I talked to her and I was like, I just feel like I'm so frustrated. I'm really scared. Like this is really heavy. And she like walked me through it, and I have never felt better about money, and I'm not really making like just a shit ton more than I was when we had talked. I mean, I am like, I figured some things out, but like, yeah, it was just like a really big, I was like, man, I really wish this was something that they would talk about more in school.
Yeah.
Like, I wish that this was a topic that people would be more educated on, and just like talk about like how right now like it's hard to buy groceries. Like Jake and I are like struggling to buy groceries. Like it's so expensive. Like stuff costs so like it I think it costs us like $200 a week for 2 people. Yeah. That's crazy to me. Like that's
that
so
doesn't
wild.
Even sound crazy to me.
So but like yeah, and then just like thinking back to even when I was younger, I'm like, when I first started driving, gas was like $1.19. Now it's almost $4.
Yeah. It's crazy. I do think like there's a difference between financial literacy, and there is around money mindset. I think money mindset is it really, a lot of that comes also from families and their different approach to money, because true. I think there can be like a lack and scarcity mentality, and then there can also be an abundant mentality, and then there's like somewhere in between. So I'm sure there's something that I didn't even say, but I think that I kind of feel like that has to do with your experience and also your values around how you want to spend money. Because like the books that have really helped me with mindset in particular, one of them is, I'm just going to say the title, but it's got a bad word in it. I'm not going to say it. Rich as Fuck. And that is a really helpful book. Like it really helped me look at things in a different way. It also helped me see some of the biases that I have, that I have because of experiences in life. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I also read another one, and I don't remember the title, but it was also very helpful, and a lot about abundance and like manifesting and things like that. But then the book that I'm reading right now in a book club with Teresa and some other people it doesn't feel like it's necessarily mindset. It feels like it's kind of giving you some practical,
like logistics.
Guidelines on like how to deal with debt, how to deal with credit, how to like stuff like that. And I think that's interesting, but I am like, I really want to focus on like opening and allowing more to come, and having like an abundant mentality where I'm not scared to like let
Mariah
something
has
go.
A course that she's launching right now.
Really?
You should check it out, because I joined her membership, and that's when everything was like really shifted for me. Because she does both, like connected. Like she's like, you need them both. Like you need to understand like your mindset around it to be able to like properly do your logistical part of. I mean, like money is numbers. So like there's still the mathematical part of it. But like,
I was happy to see that a lot of the things that she said I was doing. So I'm like, okay, well this feels good. Like I feel like I have these high interest debt is paid off. And I'm like, so that feels, but there's I don't know. So I just think that's interesting. So definitely have to check that out. But I don't think people talk about, I don't know how open people are about making money sometimes. I mean, like that's even true. Especially
or like
women
wanting money.
Yes, it's like a bad thing to want money. Like which I don't agree with at all. I think also you don't have to justify your reason.
You can just want a nice car. Or you can just want like lots of money to shop. Like there doesn't need to be a reason.
You don't have to be a reason. I think that I think when it aligns to like you as a person and your values and your things like that, I think that's more beneficial. But I don't need someone to tell me why they want to make money. I know for me it's about like the thing that I value is generosity and love and connection. And so I don't think that I'm going to give money and make a connection. I don't mean that. I mean that I want to be able to help you, Jake, Jackson. Like I want to be able to give in that sense. I also want to be able to give to things that I think are important. Even as far as like, I just donated to 2 political campaigns. I've never done that in my life. And, I donate to church. Like I donate to, I want to be able to give without feeling like I have to worry about it. But I also was thinking about this the other day, as far as like, there's 2 different types of generosity. You have the generosity where you give, and it's a sacrifice to give. I remember this one time I had this music teacher I was teaching at this Title I school, and this music teacher came from Puerto Rico, and he was new to I mean, I guess that's part of the United States, but
It
he,
wasn't then, though.
yeah. And so he came, and then I mean, he was really struggling. And then on a teacher salary, he was just really
Yeah.
struggling. And I was struggling. Like I was, I have a single mom, I had 2 kids, I barely had any child support. And the dad had just given me $125 in cash, and I had it in my purse, and I gave it to him. I was like, it was a sacrifice
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
But I knew he needed it more than I did. And that I wanted to be, it was like such a great feeling. It was such a great feeling. And he was like, he cried, and he's like, no, I can't take this. I'm like, yes, you can. I'm like, some people have done this for me.
Yeah.
This is my way of paying it forward. Please let me.
Yeah.
And so he did. But there's also the kind of generosity where you don't feel it. Like if you have so much that it doesn't really, you're willing to do it as long as it's not really a sacrifice to you.
Yeah. I don't know that I've felt like that about a lot of things. I can remember when Jake and I lived in Sarasota, and I was at the library one day, and I don't know why, but I had my checkbook with me, like in my purse, and I never have my checkbook with me. And this lady comes into the library, and she was like talking with someone, and she was just like really stressed. And I just felt like I was like hearing God be like, you need to give her $500.
Wow.
And I was like, in my head, I was like, no, like I can't do that. I have to pay my own rent. Like that's basically my cut of rent. Like, and he was like, go to your car and like get your checkbook. And cause I saw her walk out, and I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I like walked out, and I was like, I feel like I heard that something's happening, and I don't know what it is, but I'm like, I just feel like God is calling me to help you right now, and like, I want to give you this check. And she was like, what? Like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like that you need this more than I do. And she started crying, and she was like, that's exactly how much I needed to cover my rent to stay in my house.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, good, then you need it. And she was like, can we go in and write it right now? The guy's still there, so that he won't like basically kick her out.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like I'll do it however you need me to do it. And we went in, and he was like, are you sure? Like the guy was very confused.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep. And I did, and she was like, I can't believe you did that. Like that was so nice. And I could tell that she was scared that like I was gonna want it back.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no strings with this.
Yeah.
Like you don't.
It's a gift.
I'm like not gonna give you my number. Like you don't have to contact me ever again. Like we'll probably never see each other again. Like this is just for you. And she was so like relieved. Yeah. And I was like, it was all of it was God. Like it was just like completely him. Like in that moment. But yeah, it's like things like that I'm like, I want to be able to do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Me too. I think that's beautiful. I've never heard that either.
Yeah, I didn't really tell anybody about it. I just kind of like let it happen. Like I didn't want, not that I want credit for it now. I just feel like it's one of those things that like maybe if it inspires somebody else to do the same, like, but I think at the time I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody about this. Like I'm just going to let it be like for her, and it be her gift, and that be it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's a beautiful thing. I wish that we talked about that more. All right. So another thing that nobody ever talks about.
Health and wellness, I put. But I know that people talk about this, but I feel like there's sections of it that people don't talk about. And one thing I put here, like in our notes, is like how I think the like health care system is just like very broken, which like we kind of talked about this a little bit in regards to mental health and like the price and stuff, but and like how it's financially unsustainable, like it's people can't afford it. But I'm like, one thing that I have experienced within the past few years is like how women specifically are underrepresented, they're not advocated for, and like dismissed. Like because the healthcare system was created based on how it affects like the male anatomy, that when women go in with like chronic pain or extreme pain or whatever they're dealing with, it's like, oh, well, just like take some aspirin, like you'll be fine. Like it's not acknowledged because it's not as understood, and so it's just like gaslighting them into thinking they're the ones that are crazy. And a really huge example I have seen of this, one of the influencers I follow, Mick Zazon, she has endometriosis, and she has like some other like chronic illnesses. Like she lives in like chronic pain, and she she has been going to the doctors for years and years about how painful it is, like for her bladder, like things that are going on within her, like how excruciating, like she has had to take like I think like a month off of work lately because she's in such pain and just crying all day. And she's like, and I go to the doctor and they're like, nothing's wrong. And she's like, something's wrong. Like, if I'm in this much pain, something's wrong. Like, this isn't just me making it up. And no, I'm not just going to take Advil and do whatever. And recently she had shared that she was on like a girls trip with two of her friends, and she had like a flare up with like her like bladder issue, and she went in and they tried to dismiss her, but because she was with two of her friends, one of her friends was like, no, like that's not good enough. Try again, like come back with a different solution and we'll be here. Because they were like, we're not just gonna let you say take some Advil and move on. Like and I think that that's something that I realized is way more common than what we talk about when I went to Bali, because everybody that was there was like, yeah, I've been to the doctor and they've told me like this about my period, or they've told me this about my pain or whatever. And I'm like, I mean, I can even think of that when I went into my gynecologist thinking I might have had PCOS. She was like, oh, you don't have it, so you're fine. And I was like,
I still have some symptoms of it.
Yeah. And when I have talked to my like hormone coach now, she's like, did you get blood tested? Like there's sometimes it doesn't show up on an ultrasound. Like there's things that they didn't do. And she was like, but even if you don't have it, like there's still something like going on.
Because you're having symptoms. Which is one of the reasons why, and we didn't do our highs and lows, I just remembered. But one of my lows, and my rheumatologist is moving to New Hampshire. And I am so upset about it, but partly because I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And they thought I might have lupus, and they thought all these different things. And then when I got to him, he's like, you have a negative RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis, but you have a positive ANA, which is like an indicator that you do have RA. And he's like, he's like, it doesn't matter because we're going to treat the symptoms. And at the time I was like, what? It doesn't matter. But the thing is that he wasn't just dismissing me because they couldn't figure it out. He was like, we're going to treat you like you have RA because you have the symptoms of RA. And it doesn't matter that it said negative. And we're going to do this very, what's the word? Aggressive, this very aggressive treatment so that we can put this in remission right away. And that was a huge thing. So I think that's another thing. And we talked about this before too, but like finding the right doctors. Like if a doctor doesn't listen to you, go to a different doctor. You don't have to stay with the doctor doesn't listen. For sure. I feel like I found an endocrinologist who was excellent, who also thrives on challenges. So he was like, I'm gonna figure this out. And he took it as a personal, like, I'm going to figure this out. And that's the kind of doctor you want. If you have a person that's telling you, oh no, you're fine, take aspirin, then you don't have the right doctor. And there's a lot of wrong doctors. That makes me mad.
No, her Mick's story is crazy. She like talks a lot about it, and somebody recently just commented on her post and was like, I love Mick and whatever, but like, do we really think she's in this much pain? And she was like, she wasn't like aggressive when she posted about it. She was like, you know, like the sad thing about this comment is that we are so ingrained to think that women's pain is just not real. And she's like, women experience, I heard that period cramps can be as bad as a heart attack.
Wow.
Like that be the same level of pain. Yet we still are expected to do everything at full force when we're on our period.
And not even, no, I know. I used to have a terrible mine were terrible.
Yeah.
Like my whole back used to just ache and ache and ache. And it was like something
It's
was
brutal.
squeezing inside of you. Yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah.
All right. So that's another thing that we don't talk enough about.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
This one's for you to talk about because I don't know anything about this.
Oh, menopause. I really just feel like we don't talk enough about menopause. First of all, there's like an age range and you're considered, you go through perimenopause, which is like usually 10 years before it can be up to 10 years before you actually hit menopause.
That's long.
Isn't that a long time? Yeah. So your hormones are already starting to fluctuate in that time period.
Did you go through it for 10 years?
I don't know if I went through it for 10 years. I went through menopause early though. Like I was at the cutoff, like 47, I think it's 47, 46 or 47 to whatever. And what I should have said and what I feel like they need to say more often is if you are on the younger side, like if there's a way to reverse it, you don't want to go through menopause at that age.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things affected by that. It's your bone density. You're talking about your bones.
Yeah.
Like I have osteopenia, which is like a bone thing where my bones are weaker in areas of my body because I'm not producing that kind of those kind of hormones anymore. Your skin, your private parts. Yeah. I mean, it is so many things that are impacted that they just act like, oh, well, you're in menopause. Oh, well, at 47.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's still
no,
young.
It is still young. And so it's just, and it's brutal. It's brutal. It's hell on earth. Like you feel like you're burning up from the inside.
Yeah.
It is, the hot flashes are so brutal. And then the mood swings, I felt like I wanted to kill people. Like it was so bad. It was so bad. I definitely lost some friends at that time. I mean, it was already a hard time in life, but my goodness, that was a hard situation, and they just don't talk about it enough. I follow, she's a Peloton instructor, Christine. I love her. What is it? I am, I do, I will, or I am, I can, I will, I do. Something like that. That's what she is on Instagram. Yeah. She's so great, but she's a Peloton instructor, and she's so funny because she's like, "Can we get the fans on?"
Yeah,
and she's like, "Are my hot and cold crew here?" Because that's another thing. You get really hot, and then you're like freezing to death. Yeah. So it is not a fun situation, and I just feel like we don't really talk about it very much.
No, and there's not really. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but I don't know of any like support for that. Like when you're in it.
I mean, there's some books, and I'm sure there's some more resources, but
I'm talking like hands-on, helpful, this is how you can navigate it and not be miserable kind of support.
Yeah, and even like, I mean, and I love my gynecologist, but she was like, okay, whatever. I'm like, I don't know, I just don't think we should take it so lightly.
It's because it's another thing.
Yeah.
That is like, well, women are just expected to endure whatever kind of like shitty thing that's going on because like we're not going to take the time to figure out how to make it more pleasant for them because it has no benefit for men. Yeah, that's frustrating. I don't know, so that's the thing that I don't think we talk about. Yeah, which also leads into how we don't really talk about periods.
Yep.
Oh man, I feel like I could go on forever about this. I think this is something that needs to be better educated from like elementary school. Because like they tell you about periods when you're in 5th grade. I remember but also, oh, this makes me so mad. They split up boys and girls and only tell girls about it, which I think is
dumb.
Complete bullshit. Because any male, anybody in general should understand like that human anatomy and like the why and what happens and what can be like just all those different things. Like there's such a lack of education, and really what they tell you about when you're in those things, at least when I was that age, was like don't wear a tampon for too long or you'll get toxic shock syndrome.
Gosh, I was so scared of toxic shock syndrome.
Because that's what they like freaking
But I have
ingrained.
a friend that had that got that. So yeah, but you're right. That's all they care. That's all they talk about.
And I'm like, that's not really a common thing, especially now. And
also, it wasn't common then.
Yeah,
it's a rare.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, be careful if you wear a tampon, you get toxic shock syndrome. And then they would be like, then it was just like, don't have sex. Okay, that's it.
Yeah,
like that's
Yeah.
crazy. That is so, like, it like blows my mind that that's enough.
Yeah.
For us to talk about such an intense, like, large part of, like, the female anatomy.
Life. Yeah.
And, like, the fact that like, our periods, people who get periods, like, are able to create life. Like, there's so much with that, and we're not educating people on this.
And why do we not want boys to know? Because shouldn't they understand this?
Yeah.
And they're going to be a part of it, like buying pads and tampons and things like that.
Yeah.
In their lifetime. And also having some kind of empathy would be really great.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense that we even leave men out of this.
Yeah, and we also with that, like, they should be educated on our hormone cycles, and we should be educated on their hormone cycles.
Sure, because I didn't even know it was 24 hours. And that's another thing. That's because they used to treat it as if it was a dirty thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep it quiet. Gross. Yeah, it's dirty, and it's a bad thing. You were, like, considered, like, oh, yes, stay away from her. She is on her period. So that's part of, like, we've continued that into the 21st century, which doesn't make any sense. I've got something in my eye. It's really driving me crazy. All right. Another one we don't talk about. I mean, we're really on a roll with the women's fertility and health.
Yeah.
Postpartum. That can be a brutal situation.
I'm scared for that, honestly. That's something I have, like, I'm, like, nervous about.
That's understandable, which that makes it worse when you feel that way.
know.
But no, and honestly, I feel that way for you because, when you already have what's the word?
Depression.
Yeah, depression, anxiety, you're already dealing with that. Mm-hmm. Then when you're pregnant, your, like, body is just flooded full of hormones.
Can you take depression meds when you're pregnant?
I don't know if you can when you're pregnant. I had to go off of mine when I was pregnant. I know.
That sounds
terrifying. But that might not be the case now because there are, like, a class of medication where if it's better for the benefit for, so that might not be true anymore, but it was, 20 years ago, 20 years ago, Jackson's going to be 20.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, but you weren't even really supposed to take them when you were breastfeeding, but I did with Jackson. I didn't take them with you. I didn't even take medication before you, which is crazy. But I remember talking to the nurse practitioner, she's like, she had just come back from a conference, and she's like, listen, if you feel like it is so much more important for you to be stable and safe so that you can take care of your baby, and if there's any trace amount that he's getting in breast milk, she's like, well, you might just be doing him a favor. And
I was gonna say he gets a little boost of serotonin.
So I was like, all right. I mean, she helped me because it's hard, and you there's so much of you that doesn't want to do something that would hurt your baby.
Yeah.
But, like, when you were completely, I mean, I had terrible postpartum. It was bad.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a mom almost my whole life. I don't remember not wanting to be a mom. Like, I played with my baby dolls. Like, I wanted to be a mom. Yeah. That's another thing we don't talk about. And like, breastfeeding. Like, I remember, like, pretending to breastfeed my baby doll.
I did that too.
Yeah, and my stepdad made me feel so ashamed. He got mad at me and told me to stop and not to do that. And that is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. So I remember being so ashamed. I felt so much shame. It was such a terrible feeling. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Mm-mm. And I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with like I think younger kids, like, appropriately exploring their body.
Yes.
Because, like, we don't have to sexualize everything. That's the problem with so much.
Yeah, I was pretending to feed my child.
Yeah.
So it was, yes.
And you were a kid.
I was a kid. I was, like, 6. And, I mean, I was little. And then it's just, but anyway, so I wanted to be a mom my whole life. And then when I had you, I just wasn't expecting, like, such a severe sadness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Do I not love my baby? Yeah. And also it was really hard. I had a really traumatic birth. Like, you almost died. Mm-hmm. And it was terrifying. It was so scary. I thought I was dying to save you. Yeah. That's what I honestly thought was happening. And And so after that kind of a delivery, that's another thing that ramps up the postpartum. And it was hard. It was really hard. And I had trouble breastfeeding, and I felt like I couldn't do basic things. I'm like, I can't even take care of her. I can't even keep her alive. Like, it just felt like, I don't know, like a terrible mom. I remember one time I couldn't get you to stop crying, and I had you in the bassinet, and I remember pushing it away from me, and it hit the wall, and I was like, oh, I'm abusing my child. And I really felt like I could definitely see the line of insanity. Like I was like standing by the line of insanity. And I
You're
just
also so sleep deprived.
So sleep deprived.
You, like,
Yeah.
your body has just excreted a human.
Yeah.
A whole entire human.
Yeah.
Like, your body has been through a physical trauma.
Yeah.
Too. Like,
It's
which
hard.
I think is like not given enough credit.
Oh, for sure.
When like you're giving birth.
Because they're like, people just had kids in the fields, but you know what? We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So
okay, well, we're not in that time frame anymore.
And I don't know.
That's like saying,
I just think
like,
we just don't.
The time people used to get stoned when they did sex, so we don't do that anymore.
That's awful. No, I know it's just I just feel like we just need to be more honest about it and more open about it, so that people realize that when that's happening to them, they can seek out help.
Yeah.
Because you need help.
And they're not a bad mom.
No, they're not. Yeah.
Like their parental status. It doesn't make them less of a person. It's just.
And having people around you that recognize signs, that's where you will have such a benefit.
Yeah.
Because you have people that understand that and know what that looks like, and so I think that'll be helpful. All right. Next.
Sex, yeah, I don't think people talk about sex very. Oh, I think it's better. I think my generation has gotten a lot better.
Your generation is definitely better. My generation is very like
British.
British?
I said prudish.
Oh,
British.
Prudish. Yeah, I guess I don't think all people are. I think maybe I am.
Yeah, I mean, well, even just a second ago, you were like, private parts. You could just say vagina.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I think your generation is definitely further along.
And I also think a lot of like the sex topic is, I don't know, there's shame in it for women more.
Yeah.
And it that's gotten better, but I mean, it's not like just fixed, but I think that's probably why, like, over time, like, it was harder, because, like, I mean, women who had sex before marriage were, like, deemed dirty and worthless. So
not the men, just the women.
Yeah, just the women. So I think now that we have come into a time where more women are acknowledging the fact that like, whether you decide to have sex or not, however you decide to have sex, like, is your bodily autonomy, and, like, has nothing to do with your worth or who you are or if God loves you. Like, and that's one thing I really like about the church that I go to is that they have, for the students, they do a yearly, like, talk on sex, and they talk about how, like, damaging that purity culture could have been, because it's, like, basically shaming you into thinking that, like, even if you were to make this choice, like, then like, God, like, is just like, oh, well, that was, you made a horrible, dirty mistake, when like, we're created as beings to have sex. Like, the reason for sex is not just to have a child. Like, there's lots of reasons for sex. So I think, like, it, obviously they don't go, like, that deep into it at church, but they do, like, go over that, and, like, how, like, there doesn't need to be shame, but, like, you can talk to people about it. And I think that kind of stuff is important. Yeah. Because also the thing with, like, being more open about sex is, like, creating more safety around it. For sure. So,
and being okay with even having those kinds of conversations with your kids, and even being okay when your kids, like, start to discover themselves, and not making it a shameful event. Like, that's a private thing.
Yeah, like, sex and masturbation doesn't have to be this, like, naughty whatever, like, which I think masturbation is something that's definitely not talked about.
Yeah, for
like,
sure. That's not talked
that's
about.
more like, oh, that's dirty. And I remember when I was a teenager and somebody was talking about, I was like with my friends, and one of my guy friends was like, yeah, like, well, you shouldn't masturbate like if you have a boyfriend, because then you're like being rude to him. And in my head I was like, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Does he have to have the same rules?
I don't know.
That
I was
is
like,
so
I just think that's the
stupid.
most ridiculous thing anyone's ever said. Also, the most male thing anyone's ever said. But I was like, why? Like, you can also just like explore your body and be appreciative of pleasure for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing dirty or wrong about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's just something
Interesting.
people don't talk about.
All right, another thing that they don't talk about.
This is the one that actually Jake kind of brought up. He was like emotional intelligence and comprehending and articulating your feelings. And I think this one is more specific to men, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, and Jake will say this, I'm not just saying this from my perspective, but before we started dating, he didn't like have a good understanding of emotional intelligence. Like, he didn't really articulate his feelings. Like, he was just good, okay, whatever. Like, that was it. And like, he still like is working on that.
Sometimes you still
yeah, he still works on that. But I think like it's, I mean, another thing, we don't talk about that in school. We don't really I mean, I think some teachers have gotten better about it, and that there are like specialty things that are done, but like it's not like just known that we talk about that, or like how to express our feelings, and that it's okay to talk about how you feel, especially with men, because it's like if you're sad or you're crying or you're like struggling, then you're looked at as weak. And like, it's just another one of those like gender roles that's affects mental health
for sure,
both
and like giving I mean, I don't
say.
think it was like feelings and talking about your feelings like didn't happen as much in my generation.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So like we've come like a long way with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think that's one of Jackson's strengths. I think he has a high emotional intelligence. He is definitely able to talk about his feelings and articulate how he feels and why, and like even reflect on past behavior.
Yeah.
Which I think is which I don't think a lot of people can do.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean it's hard and scary and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think it's just something I just wish it was like, when I'm picturing like the most beautiful ideal like school situation, I'm like, there would be like small groups where you could just talk to people
for sure
about
all of
like
your
how
feelings.
you feel.
Yeah.
And like, not even, and it doesn't have to be like some strict whatever, but just like, I don't know, like a small group time. Like, how was your day? Well, it's been really crappy and this is why. Like, exercising the muscle of how to talk about what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
I think that would also prevent a lot of crime, but that's a whole nother topic.
All right, another one, relationships. So I didn't write this one down. So you feel like people don't talk about relationships?
Yeah, I feel like people don't talk about, I mean, I was talking to you about this, especially about friendship dynamics. I think, at least in my experience, I always am like, okay, well, like, I think like I need to have the one best friend, and it's just going to be like that forever. And also, like, I don't think I really learned about the different types of friends until I heard a sermon about it less than a year ago, and how like different friends take different seats in your life and are there for a different reason. Like, you're gonna have the friend that's there to tell you like when you're kind of being crazy or ridiculous, and they're gonna like be there for you during that, and they'll show up when like you're having a baby or whatever. Like, they're there for you through thick and thin. But then you're gonna have the friends that are like good for a good laugh, and like you don't go to them to tell them about your trauma. And like, that doesn't mean that they're not a good friend. It just means that they're a different kind of friend. So I think that's something that's not talked about a lot. And I also think in the romantic sense, I think social media has like clouded people's judgment on, I guess, like what that can look like. Because I think I love like I when I was a teenager, like I loved the idea of like love and romance and whatever. But that's also, which is great and that should be in a relationship, but it's not all day, every day, all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of sucks when you're younger and that's all you see on social media. And then when you have conflict or you have been in a relationship for a while, you have to work for that. Like, it's not just like because you're not in the honeymoon phase anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to learn how to actually, like, do that, too. So, I think that's something that, I mean, I've definitely struggled with because I'm like, oh, I see all these influencers and they're like, have these big, beautiful dates and the bachelor goes to all these countries and candlelit dinners. But, it's like love can also be like Jake bringing me and filling up my water every night. Yeah. Like, that's such a simple, small act that I appreciate so much. Yeah. Like, and that's not something they would put in a movie. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So, like, I think that's what I meant by relationships.
No, I like that. I think that's a good point because you're just seeing, well, social media, you're just seeing, like, most of the time, it's just the positive part. Yeah. It's like the, your best foot forward, but not all the nitty gritty behind the scenes.
Yeah. So it makes you feel
and all
kind
the
of
things
alone.
That lead up to that. Yeah. You do feel alone. That's true. Because you're like, I don't have that, or I don't have that.
Is there something wrong with my relationship? Because I don't feel like this all the time. Like, and
so many consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Another one is healthy communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
think this has to do with, I mean, we've talked about it already on, I guess now it's like weeks ago, but on the podcast where like setting boundaries is something you have to learn. Yeah. And figure out within all of your relationships, and communicating through conflict
is really hard.
Yeah.
Especially if both people aren't willing to communicate. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it's even harder when someone outright refuses. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to talk about that. Yeah. I'm not going to address the problem that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that healthy communication is like obviously learned over time, and it comes from all your childhood stuff and what you've been modeled. But I think it's another thing I wish, like, I just wish there was more life things, I guess, taught in school. Yeah. Because I feel like communication is the key of any relationship you're in. Yeah. Period.
And working through, when you love someone, you go through it. Yeah. With them.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a screaming match.
No. Yeah.
Like, you can go through conflict and love someone through conflict and then learn each other more through that. Yeah. So I think, like, when people are in a state in their life where they don't know how to do that, then your relationships are going to suffer, and you'll see that.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to know how to deal with conflict in a way that is like at least like respectful and kind.
Yeah, I agree. And and the only way to really like hone those skills, practice those skills, is doing it. Mm-hmm. So,
but also like it being modeled, I think is
for sure. That's a huge,
because like you'll learn. Sometimes you could learn the anti-example, or you could, but like you don't know if that's the anti-example until like you're, so I don't know. I think I love seeing like parenting stuff like on TikTok and stuff of like parents teaching their kids like how to communicate like with them, like they'll practice it with them, so that way like they have a stronger like intelligence around like their emotions and communicating that, and like being able to like actually use it as like a grown person eventually. Cool. Which I think is cool. Obviously there's some like really extreme versions, but yeah.
All right, and then the last one, when it's time to take meds. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like we've talked about this, and especially the episode about
like suicide, and mental health.
And mental health.
And what it's like to be on meds, and what it's like to change meds and need a different med. And
I definitely feel like, I mean, I have a friend that is like, oh no, I couldn't take that because of all the side effects. And there are side effects. So, that is something to know.
But you don't get all.
No, you're right.
Of the
You don't
side
get all the
effects.
side effects. And also, you don't know for sure how it's going to impact you until you have tried it.
Yeah. And normally, at least from what I've experienced with the list of meds that I've been on, is that like when you have side effects, it's not like you just like are like boom, you're dead. Like you're not just gonna
Yeah,
like
yeah.
instantly like
Yeah.
drop down to the ground. Like things come and then you tell your psychiatrist
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
well, like I like, for example, like dry mouth is like something that
Yeah.
happens to me, which is why I always have my water.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was something that like happened and I was like, okay, I'm starting to have dry mouth. And when I told my psychiatrist at the time, she's like, is it something that is affecting you so much that we need to try something different?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you feel like is like a livable, like
Yeah.
fine thing? And I'm like, that's great for me. It makes me drink more water.
Yeah.
So like, I don't really care. But like, also like you can lose your libido when you're on a new med. And I was like, that I
Yeah.
don't want. So like, let's try something different.
Yeah. Weight gain has been the thing for
Yes.
me. Like, I just increased, my meds not that long ago and gained some weight with it. And I'm like, oh. So that's hard, and frustrating. And but then you're like, well, the alternative is I'm just really sad and angry all the time.
Yeah.
So
you have to weigh the options, and you have to have a good like point of contact to go over what is worth it and what's not.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So those are some topics that people don't like to talk about.
Yeah. I would love to hear in the comments, or I don't know.
What's a topic you don't love to hear about?
What is the
Or
topic?
talk about?
What is this? Maybe is there something we missed? Is there something that you were like, ooh, I did not like hearing you talk about that?
Yeah.
Like, tell us in the comments below. And yeah, ask us any questions you have about these topics. I mean, like we just basically went at the tip of the iceberg with all of them. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of those could be a separate topic.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Bye.